This is the first episode of Let's Grab Coffee. So it's a podcast that I started. I really just want to bring successful individuals in different industries to see what kinds of things they're doing, some of the experiences they have, and really just to have them share them with us here today. So I'm super pumped. I'm super excited to have our first guest. Paul Nadeau is here with me today. Paul has amazing experience. He was a police detective, an investigator, hostage negotiator. Paul was then deployed on an international peacekeeping mission to Jordan. And this was at the age of 49 years old, something impeccable. Paul doesn't stop there. You know, he became an instructor, a lecturer, a motivational speaker. Doesn't stop there either. Paul then goes, speaks at TEDx, an accomplishment every single presenter, including myself, wants to do one time in their life. He delivers an impeccable performance. And then finally, to wrap this gift up, Paul publishes Hostage to Myself, a book you can find on Amazon, and I urge you, friends, I urge you to buy this book. It's an amazing book, a lot of great experiences which we'll talk about today. And to be honest, I have one more thing. Paul is also a professional actor. He's done some really cool shows, short films here in Toronto. I'm so humbled, Paul, really from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for being here. Let's grab some coffee and let's just cheers to the first episode.
Cheers, exactly. Well, George, I want to first start off by saying thank you so much for including me in your very first podcast. Pleasure. And I wish you every success. It is a great concept, and I'm excited to be here myself.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm so glad to get underway. And thank you to all those who are on Facebook Live. We're also filming YouTube, so it's all going to be there.
Yeah.
They're all excited to see you, Paul.
Great.
I got a first question for you.
Yeah.
Tell me what it takes to be a hostage negotiator.
Well, okay. What does it take to be a hostage negotiator? Number one, it takes a desire and a will to do it. It also takes somebody who really knows how to communicate with people. Because you can imagine, hostage negotiations, we're talking to people who have taken hostages, are threatening to kill people, or on the other hand, we call it also crisis negotiation, because about 95% of the calls that a hostage negotiator goes out to are people in distress, suicidal individuals. So what you're looking for are people who are committed, people who are willing to put in the work to do it, and people who are interested in making a difference, but they can communicate. So it takes a lot of training to be one. But I think the most important thing is the ability to communicate and communicate well with people.
Wow. Okay, so I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Now, I come from a finance background, graduating university and stuff, and I mean, for us, when we want to apply to a job, it's a traditional route, right? Like, you get your resume, you either apply online or hit up a connection that you have. Is it a similar process for a hostage negotiator, or does it depend on the experience being as a police detective?
It depends on the experience that you have. And I worked for a regional department, Durham region, and we only had a couple of hostage negotiators, maybe about 4 or 5. When a position became available, I had worked for several years as an interviewer and interrogator, and I was quite good at it. And when this position came up, I just applied for it and said, hey, I'd love to do it. Now, the people that I was working with, they knew my ability, they knew my capability, but the decision was not theirs. It really rested with the RCMP. They had to make a final decision as to whether or not you were qualified to do the work. So I had to go through a process with the RCMP before they selected me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I always talk about attaching purpose to action, right? You always start with your why, and then you get to the what. Now, as a child, I was overweight. I was the chubby guy, the funny guy. But I've had so many different routes in life, and I never really knew exactly what I wanted to be. Did you just wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to be a hostage negotiator? How did that happen for you, Paul?
No. Well, are you asking specifically about being a hostage negotiator or about becoming a cop?
Really both, just in that type of industry. I mean, how did you
Okay.
get into it?
Here's how it happened for me. I grew up in a very abusive home. My father was a very mean and physically terrible individual.
Hear that.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's the past. I'll get to that in a minute. But really, it comes down to the fact that I grew up in a home in which we were all afraid to do anything. And we were beaten. My mom was beaten. My siblings were beaten. We lived in that kind of environment. And I remember when I was about 7 years old, after having taken everything that I had taken, and after having watched my family go through everything, I decided at 7 years old that when I grew up, I was going to become a policeman so I could arrest people like my dad. That was a little bit of a promise that I made to myself to become this police officer. And as the years went by, that dream never died. I just wanted to do that. Now, my father killed himself when I was 17. He shot himself. And so arresting him, I never got an opportunity to do. But, when I got through that, I still joined the police at 21. And after being there, I just applied myself as much as I could to get whatever jobs I thought would be great and fun. I want to have fun when I'm working. Now you say hostage negotiations. What, is that fun? No, it's not. It's not. It is very stressful, but it is very worthwhile because if you do it well, you're saving lives.
That's the reward.
That's the reward, George. Yeah. When you're saving lives and you leave that night or that morning, whatever, a hostage negotiation can go anywhere from 2, 3, 4 hours to 24 hours. Wow. God knows, how many hours it could, and some of them stretch off into days. I've never had one of those, but I've had long ones, and every one of them were successful, and I was blessed that nobody died on my watch.
Paul, I want to stick on this subject. There's something important I want to get out here. How do you stay calm? Actually, I skipped a couple of questions, but you touched on a great topic here, and I really want to hammer it home for those watching. How do you remain calm in these types of conflicts, in these types of very stressful situations? What do you like? Do you, meditate internally? What's your process of just remaining calm, being there, staying rational? Don't let your emotions get to you. How do you solve the problems? Make quick judgments. How does that all happen?
Well, let's look at what it takes to be a hostage negotiator. Yes. Other than the will, it takes a lot of training, and the training includes professional actors that come in and they're going to play the roles of the suicidal people or the hostage takers. We have no idea what the scenario is going to be, but we practice all the time. So it's very much like firemen who go out and they practice for fire calls all the time, so that when it does happen, you've done it so often that you feel a level of comfort.
Right.
And so the practicing and the role playing, sitting in a small room, talking on a phone with a hostage taker, and getting a scenario given to you that you've practiced, maybe 3 weeks ago, very much helps, in the overall process. And how do I remain calm? I have to be focused. I have to remind myself that this is my job, and I'm going to do my job well. And I'm not doing it alone. I have a number of people who are working with me. As a hostage negotiator, if I'm a primary hostage negotiator, you would be my secondary negotiator. Now I'm in charge of talking with the suspect, with the individual, and should the communication break down for whatever reason, that'll be handed off to you. You might have to start off and say, hey, I realize it didn't work out with Paul, and my name is George, and I'm a negotiator as well. I want to work with you. So we work as a team. Then we also have people in the background conducting investigations on who these individuals are. I want to know what they had for breakfast. I want to know who they love. I want to know what's meaningful to them, because if I can bring that in, if my intelligence officers who are working there will slip us pieces of paper, and we'll take a look at that and say, okay, he's got 2 daughters, and he really loves his 2 daughters. So if I can bring that into the conversation and remind him of what really is important to him, then that will be part of the success of talking him out. So I will prepare myself mentally. I'll remember that it is a job, and I will approach it with the utmost caution and respect.
Yes.
And I will do my best to make sure that I get the person talking.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Paul, I think a lot of people watching this, including myself, we have so many things we're always afraid of. when I first launched my first YouTube video, it was terribly edited. I mean, I didn't even know how to use Adobe software. It was just all over the place. And I guarantee you a lot of people got a good chuckle out of it. But what it did teach me, and a lot of people who took it in good faith, that you just have to just jump in sometimes, including this podcast.
You do.
I mentioned to you that I had no prior experience. I don't have an official website. I don't even have a huge budget for this. I mean, I'm shooting from my camera, Facebook Live from my cell phone.
Yeah.
We're here, we're doing it though.
Yeah.
We're doing it. I'm so grateful that you took on this opportunity. But how do you overcome this fear? You've done presentations on TEDx, international peacekeeping, where you had to leave your family, you had to just pursue this opportunity, hostage negotiation. How do you just say, what, fear does not exist? The only limits that exist are the ones I create for myself. I can do this.
You've answered that, and wonderfully, George. Fear is a four-letter word that we should all look at as being the nastiest word out there. The word fear, F-E-A-R, is a dream killer. And we have to look at fear as being maybe an obstacle, but also an obstacle that we can get around, that we can face. Face your monsters, face your fears, because if you don't, you will sit back and you will accomplish nothing.
Amen.
Today you would not be doing this broadcast. We would not be here talking to you wonderful people here. We wouldn't be doing that because you would be sitting there thinking, well, it'd be kind of nice. It's like, we talked a little bit earlier. I remember when I became single again, the fear of asking a pretty girl out or somebody that you like out is like, oh, maybe she'll say no. But if you never do it, you might have missed your opportunity to find your soulmate. And it's the same with anything else. You have to convince yourself, you know what, I'm not afraid. And inside you're shaking in your boots, right? You're going, oh my God, I really am afraid. But by God, just step forward and do it. When you step forward and do it, it gets easier and easier every time that you do it, because the fear gets replaced by confidence. But it does not get replaced by confidence unless you face it and move beyond it. And when I was going to Jordan, I kind of figured, excuse me, I kind of figured that this may be it. I had no idea I could get killed by terrorists. I had all these imaginations of what might happen when I'm in the field, and these fears of what might happen, but my purpose was greater than me.
Yes.
The reason I went to Jordan was to help in the fight against terrorism, and I realized that I had to face that fear because my goal was greater than myself. And when you look at your fears and say, okay, despite my fear, this is what I want in the end. And if you move beyond that and say, I'm going to take that fear, stomp it out, it's a dream killer, it's going to prevent me from doing something. Why? Because I want to do it. I'm worthy of doing it. I'm capable of doing it. And sometimes it's mantras, George. Sometimes we just have to wake up in the morning and tell ourselves that we're wonderful, we're beautiful, we're capable, and remind ourselves. And not only just say the words, but the words have to follow with action. And you just have to do it. If you don't learn something, it won't come.
Right. I think that's a great segue to the next question, because fear is one thing on the side, but I think the biggest fear is the fear of failure. Like, as soon as you want to start something, your mind already starts calculating scenarios. What if something goes wrong? Right now, my phone could just tip over, Facebook Live would be over. Right now, we could have dropped the camera while we were putting it on the tripod. There would be no interview today. I mean, so many scenarios could happen. How do you just say, you know what, I can fail, but I can also learn from my failures, and something positive at the end of it will occur?
Okay. One of the things that I write in my book, Hostage to Myself, is that we really are hostages to ourselves. We are oftentimes the worst enemies that we could possibly find. It's those little nagging voices in our heads that tell us that we can't do something, that we're incapable of doing something, that keeps us hostage to these beliefs, these self-sabotaging beliefs. So how do you get beyond that? You recognize that you are caging yourself, that you are digging a hole. And it could be a sad, dark hole that you're in, you find yourself in, and God knows, we have all been in sad, dark places.
Oh, yeah.
But the idea is that when you're digging that pit of sadness, put the darn shovel down and start looking, for, the exit.
Right.
Some of the people who are the most successful in life and who have lived before us are people who constantly failed. Abraham Lincoln, how many times did he fail before he became the President of the United States?
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey was told, she was too large to have her own television show. Did that discourage her? I'm sure it did, but it didn't discourage her to the point where she moved beyond that and did something. Michael Jordan was told he couldn't play basketball. Thomas Edison, exactly.
Right.
Let's take a look. Wayne Gretzky once said that we will miss 100% of the shots that we don't take. And how true is that? If we don't try something, if we're afraid of failing, then we're afraid of moving forward. And if you want to be a success, you must move forward despite the failures that you've had in your past, because it teaches you something. Be open-minded. It's like Bruce Lee would say, be open-minded. It's just, yes.
Focus on the Zen.
Focus on the Zen. Focus on what's inside your heart.
Yeah.
And remember that you are not a hostage to anything unless you choose to be. You're not a hostage to fear. You're not a hostage to what happened to you in the past. Guess what? What happened to you in the past is in the past. Leave it there. Don't blame. Don't blame your past for your current situation right now.
Yeah.
Because blame is a killer too. We can lean on blame. I remember as a detective, I used to sit in the courtroom, and I'd have a case before the court, and the accused was before the court, and so many defense lawyers would come and say, well, Your Honor, my client, he had a bad childhood. He once fell off his bike, Your Honor. He fell off his bike, and that left him with some permanent scars. And they would use that as an excuse, and they would blame their past circumstances for the crimes they committed. Well, that's foolishness. That's crazy, So when we look at the people who have gone past the naysayers. We've gone, these people who are now successful multi-millionaires and some of them billionaires, is that they did something that a lot of people out there don't do. They left their fear behind, or they carried it with them and got used to it and then got beyond it, whatever it was. They tried something and they were motivated to succeed.
I want to touch up on something here, okay? Because, so first of all, we all know the blame game. I've played it many, many times. I wake up at 5 a.m., and a lot of people know this, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I come back home, and all I want to do is eat a jar of Nutella. Like, I want to pig out. I don't want to see anybody. I want to sit in my room. I want to complain, blame someone, blame my environment, my current financial situation. But one thing, Paul, that, I try to, say, whether it's in my videos or whether it's in my blogs, my articles, I try to sell the notion of resourcefulness, right? That you don't have to have everything to start. You don't have to be great. You don't have to be super skilled. Just give it a shot, try it out, and see if it happens. Tony Robbins, a motivational speaker, one of the best, one of the most well-known, he says, the key to happiness is progression. Make that positive progression. When you do something, you feel good about it. So in your case, has it been trying out different roles, whether it's acting, motivational speaking, policing work? Has that been your happiness to fulfill your life, I guess?
No, not entirely. I remember many years ago, my oldest daughter, she was about 8 years old, and she caught me off guard with one of the questions I remember to this day. She came to me and she says, "Dad, what's the meaning of life?" I sat back for a few moments and I really contemplated an answer. This is my daughter, someone I love very much, and I wanted to provide the best answer I could, but on the spot, my answer was relationships. So one of the most important things to me is personal relationships, and being the best dad I can be, being the best friend I can be, being the best I possibly can. The different jobs that I've done, I've been passionate about doing them. I decided that we have two closets in our brain. And on the one side of your closet are beautiful garments, their hope, their happiness, their joy, their success. That is what you can clothe your inner side with. On the other side, you have darkness, hatred, anger, and fear. And just as we get ready in the morning to clothe ourselves for our exterior bodies, so we should go into those closets of our mind and choose our attitudes for the day.
Wow.
So really, it is taking a few moments at the beginning of your day. You're right. Sometimes we come home and we're just too exhausted, or we feel that we're too exhausted to do anything. Well, if that's the kind of life that a person chooses, and I use the word chooses to live,
Yes.
all power to them. At the end of their years, I'm afraid that they may be on their deathbed, they may be visited by the ghosts of opportunity who surround their beds and say, you know, you really had a lot of opportunity out there and you decided to watch Netflix. You decided to... Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's that way. I don't want to be surrounded by the ghosts of my past's missed opportunities. I don't want it. I want to, on my deathbed, I want to be lying there and having all my ghosts and everybody surround me and go, wow, what a ride that was.
He did it, yeah.
Yeah, you did it. You did everything you possibly could.
Right.
So you know, when you're exhausted, when you're afraid, when you're down, you really have to look at yourself and say, what do I want? And examine yourself deeply on the inside. What is it that would make me happy?
Yes.
Would it make me happy to learn an instrument? Would it make me happy to be more physically fit? Would it make me happy? Where am I weak in and where am I strong in? Remember, look at your strengths as well, but also look at where you would like to improve. And then ask yourself, do you want it?
Yes.
But that's not all. How bad
do you want it?
How bad do you want it? Are you willing to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, work 2 hours in the gym, then go to work? You know, are you willing to
Pumping
make it
me up, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
You
I
know,
want to go to the gym, right?
Exactly. You know, if you want it bad enough, you can get it.
Yes.
Despite, you know, I got knocked off my horse. And, you know, like I went from, when I say I got knocked off my horse, after, you know, after retiring from the police department, I had set off to really work on my acting. And then my wife at the time informed me that she had been having an affair and wanted a divorce. So my income went from, you know, being quite good and secure to being next to nothing. And I found myself in a situation where I really had to start over financially. And that kind of knocked the wind out of my sails. But I had to draw back from what I've experienced, what I've learned, and then start to move forward. And out of that, this book was written.
Right.
Because I had no intention of writing a book. Paul Nadeau, writing a book? I don't think so.
Yeah.
You know, like it had never, you know, occurred to me. But I would start to talk to people about my experiences and what I had learned over the years. And one week in particular, the universe came knocking on my head, and actually knocked on my head 3 times. Said, "Hey, Paul, are you listening?" Because the first guy said, "Paul, you really need to write a book." Second person said, "Oh, what?
Paul, write this damn book."
They write this damn book.
Jeez.
So 2 years I spent writing, you know, this book, which is really an autobiography, but also a self-help book. I didn't realize it was going to be a self-help book, but there was so much I felt I could offer people from the experiences and from the stories that other people have told me. So, you know, from something bad, something good occurred and happened, yeah.
And let me just make something clear here, folks. What we're trying to convey here is that hard work, the grind that I always talk about, you don't have to do it, right? Like if you're comfortable going back home and watching Netflix, kudos to you. Like we're not trying to. There's no enforcement to how you should live your life, to what makes you happy. Our points only here are that if you want to do something, if you're passionate about starting that website, writing that book, starting that blog, singing on YouTube just to showcase your talent. You have to do it. And there is no short game. Like, you can't go home after you have a full-time job and say, you know what, I worked 10 hours already today. I'm too tired. I'm just going to go to bed. Like, I came back from my full-time job, and we're doing this right here, right now. So look, this is what this book is trying to convey. There's no self-sabotage. That's only in your mind. You're creating those limits. So that's all we're trying to say. If you want that hustle, if you want that grind, you want the paper, like, you have to work for it. And I think, you're a great testament to that.
Thank you, George. Yeah.
So, there was one thing actually that I read about you, and it was mentioned in several interviews, because we're on the topic now of say, conflict resolution, and we've already discussed a bit of your hostage negotiation. In 2005, there was an incident, if you recall.
I do.
I want you to tell this story because it's a fascinating story, and I want to hear the lessons that you learned from it.
Okay. The story you're referring to and the event that you're referring to occurred in Paris, France, 2005. I was on the peacekeeping mission for about 6 months, and I had traveled to Canada to spend a couple of weeks with my family, and I was on my way back to my mission. And we were sitting on the tarmac in a 747 in Paris, France, and waiting to take the final flight over to Jordan. Needless to say, I was exhausted, and I'm sure that most of the passengers were exhausted because our flight takeoff time was delayed by 45 minutes. No word from the captain. The stewardesses had no idea what was going on. We're sitting there, and all I wanted to do was just lie back and have a little bit of sleep. And then all of a sudden, I glance over and I see the captain of the plane surrounded by heavily armed police officers come in to the passenger area and shout at one man. Now, you got to realize the captain of a ship or the captain of a pilot is the extreme law. They have all authority over what happens in their particular craft. So the police actually have to follow the captain's direction and order. When he came in, surrounded by all these police officers and the cars outside, you could see them parked all over the place. It looked like an assault was about to happen. And it became very clear to me that what the captain was trying to do was negotiate with a passenger, a suspected terrorist at that, about getting off his plane. This man had made a terrorist threat to blow up the plane. Now everybody in their seats were like one of these, right? And I'm sure that there were some people texting, their loved ones. Just
sure.
It's a sad situation when you feel that your life, and we just went through that terrible experience in Orlando. Yes. My heart goes out to all the LGBT community and everybody else who's affected by this, to the
Definitely.
whole world. But imagine yourself, not certain what your next few moments are going to be. And the fact that he was shouting at this man, I was a trained hostage negotiator. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And I realized that this interchange between the two of them was not going too well. And I thought to myself, what would ever make someone engage with a suspected terrorist in that fashion? So I slowly raised my hand out of caution because, I didn't want to draw too much. Hey, how you doing? Boom, boom, boom. There you go. Okay, he must be the second terrorist, because usually terrorists work in pairs, right? In a plane.
Be careful. Right?
Yeah, so I was very, very cautious, and I got up, and I speak French. And so I spoke to the captain in French. I identified myself as a police officer and as a hostage negotiator. I asked if I could speak with him, and he allowed me to approach. And everybody, was just sitting on the edge of their chairs, trembling. And the police officers had their hands on their guns. They were ready to engage the suspect. And I walked up to him and I said, "I'm a hostage negotiator. I've been a negotiator for 7 years. Would you mind? Would you allow me to talk to this man? I'll get him off the plane." And he actually put his hand on my shoulder. He says, "Oh, yes, please."
Go ahead, it's all yours.
Yeah, it's all yours. So a 45-minute negotiation then transpired, and I was able to successfully talk the man into custody.
That's amazing.
We were removed from the plane. To this day, I have no idea if they found a bomb on that plane. I don't know whether I potentially had saved the lives of everybody, but the fact is, in my books, it's a success.
Yes.
And, you know, it was instinctive for me to, you don't stand by and watch a terrible situation unfold when you know that you can handle it much better.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing story, and I've heard this, I think, like 4 times as I was doing my studying on you, but hearing it live, man, I mean, it's just, it's insane how some people can just revert to work mode. You know, it's like if I was in business class, you know, on the plane, I was a hostage negotiator, I'm about to, like, you know, unwrap the butter, put it on the croissant, put some jam on it, lay it back, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, here we go.
Here we go.
It's go time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's interesting, is you just reverted back to it, and you have an insane ability to just control your emotions when you need to, make quick judgments, and it's not, I mean, it's not only in the benefit of yourself, but to so many lives around you.
Yes.
That's amazing. Paul, I want to ask a question here, because I have a lot of business friends of mine, you know, who've taken presentations class, and it's sort of a personal goal of mine. Like, I want to one day present on a TED or TEDx stage. I want to know, how were you able to get on that stage, and how was that experience for you?
Oh, okay. Again, you know, like just like writing the book, I had never intended to be on TED as much as I would have liked to. But here's the power of being on LinkedIn. You know, you and I met through LinkedIn.
Yeah, social media, folks.
Social media, folks, is right. You know, like, I mean, you know, we got to know each other very, very well, you know, like in the last little while. And I was contacted by a wonderful woman, Andrea Sampson, and she was in charge of the TEDx for the last few years. And she contacted me, this was last year, probably around February of last year, about another engagement, another speaking opportunity, unlinked to TED. And she asked me if I would talk about hostage negotiations and how people might learn how to negotiate a little bit better. And it was called Planning This. And of course, you know, I jumped at the opportunity. I love to talk, and maybe you guys have noticed that. But so yes, I did, and so I joined her. I presented, and then we started chatting afterwards. And she asked me about some of my experiences in the Middle East. And when I told her about a story in which a terrorist had saved my life in the Middle East. Most terrorists don't save your life, but one did save my life. I was about to die, and he saved my life. And when I told her about that experience, she said, "That's a remarkable story. You know, I think that that's worthy of presenting at TED." Now, she had no influence whatsoever on who would be chosen. About 2,000 applicants all the time.
Yeah.
She says, "But I think you should, you know, put in your ideas, and you should actually, you know, give it a shot."
Yeah.
And so I got the right papers, and anybody can apply, you know, for to be a presenter on TEDx. And so I put in what my thoughts were, what my message was, and what the message we're spreading was, and I just kind of threw it out there. I believe I did have a good message. I do have a good message, and by the grace of God, the grace of the universe, I was selected as one of the 12 speakers, and it was just an amazing, amazing experience. I met so many wonderful people. There are so many great minds in TEDx. They help you every step of the way. They help you with a writing coach. They help you with a vocal coach. They really want to see you succeed.
Wow.
And so that's how TED came. It was a gift.
What an amazing experience.
Yeah. You know, it was, and it still is. I'm still basking in the absolute joy that I had.
Right. And it's always like a blur, right? I always know when I present, it's like, yeah, even with this podcast now, like, you know, we'll do it, and I'll look back at it and say, wow, like, you know, what just happened, right? Like, you just got to take it in and just say, I'm just so grateful for such a cool opportunity.
You know what? Yes. You know, this moment, and every one of our moments, you know, I spoke about this a little earlier. The past no longer exists. You know, like, there's nothing we can do to change it. The future we can plan for, but it hasn't been written yet. What really matters to us is this moment right now. This is what you and I can control. We can control this moment. Yet within reason, we can control just about everything. So when I went for that TED Talk, you asked, how do I prepare for it? Well, it's funny. I think we're all similar creatures. I knew what I was going to say, and I had practiced, and I had planned, and I had worked with a writing coach, and then 5 minutes sitting in the green room, waiting to go on stage, and then coming backstage, I'm sitting there going, wow, I forgot everything I was going to say. I don't know what I'm going to say out there. And it's funny because I knew it, but it's that fear. And then I had to again, exactly. And then I had to again remind myself that, move beyond your fear. Take a few moments, meditate, and remember, you can do this. Convince yourself. And so when I walked out on that stage, and I hope that you all watch, my TED Talk. It's a message about terrorism. It's a message about love. It's a message about how we should be treating each other. And at a time like this, it is a message that each and every living soul should be listening to. Would you agree?
Yes, 100%.
You've heard it. And my message talks about the humanity in each and every one of us.
Yes.
And if more of us would listen to that message and start using the principles and living the principles of that message, I think we would have a lot less violence and anger and death in this world.
Yes, and I encourage you to watch the TEDx video. I didn't want to share too much because I don't want to ruin it. It is on YouTube. Yeah. Paul does have a channel. Paul, so after you wrote this book,
right?
All right, I want to know what's in store for Paul Nadeau now, because I think you're going to encourage a lot of people, including my parents who are watching this. I keep telling my dad, I'm like, man, you should just be an entrepreneur. Like, you have so much time left. You're only in your mid-50s. Like, you have so much power left to create something, to do something. And I say this for a lot of people who feel like now it's a limit. So just talk about that. You have the experience. Oh, yeah. I want to know what you're doing, what you're up to.
Yeah. Right now what I'm doing, I'm now a public and motivational speaker. And I also consult privately. Okay. I also consult for major news networks like CNN, City TV, The National, yes. And I consult on hostage negotiations throughout the world. Whenever there's a hostage taking, wow. The news networks will contact me, or if there's a terrorist incident, the news networks will contact me. But my passion now is motivational and instructional teaching. I can teach people how to negotiate. I can teach people how to, and I'm not saying hostage negotiations, I'm talking about day-to-day negotiations. Who better to tell you how to get beyond conflict to success than somebody who's done as much as I have with this, and I understand the steps. So that's what I'm doing right now. And as far as, in your father's particular situation, we are only limited by ourselves. Again, it comes down to being a hostage to yourself. It really comes down to that. If you say to yourself that I've finished one career, that's the end. I may as well just go and walk around the park and maybe play a little golf or what. If that's what you want to do, that's great. Right. But if you have other passions and joys and interests,
get to work.
You know what?
Get to work.
One chapter is finished. You write the other chapter.
Yes,
we are the authors of our own lives. We are the directors of our own lives. And you're right. Get to work.
Get to work.
Get to work and just do it. If you want something in life, you're 50, 60, 70. Some great actors, became Academy Award winners, and they started acting in their 50s and 60s. Yeah. It's just you find what you're really passionate about and write a new chapter in your life and do whatever it takes to get you there. To make that happen for you.
Amazing.
Really, it is up to you. It is up to you. Your past does not have to equal your future. Whatever happened to you in the past does not have to equal your future. In fact, if you've drawn lessons from it, if you've learned from it, then use that. And it's not just about providing, hey, just talk to yourself positively. No, that's nice. Talk to yourself positively, but follow it up with action. If you're digging yourself a hole, if you're sad, you're unhappy, you're unhealthy, stop digging.
Yeah.
And start looking for the way out. And if that means, getting counseling, professional counseling, if that's what you need, please, that's what you must do.
Yeah.
But if you can be your own counselor, if you can read, like what I have provided in this book, the tips about being your own counselor and getting yourself out of the hole and moving your way into success, then you will find the answers and the joy that you're looking for. And so when you are on your deathbed, you're going to go, that was amazing.
No regrets.
No regrets.
No regrets.
No regrets.
Paul, final thoughts.
Yep.
Most of the audience right now are in their mid-20s. So I'm 22, including myself. So
yeah.
Right now, I want to finish off on a very strong note.
Yeah.
What is one piece of advice for someone in their mid-20s, right now, watching this on Facebook Live, YouTube? What do you leave us with?
Okay. First of all, you're 22, you've already accomplished so much, and you're moving ahead. If anything, what I can leave you with is never, ever, ever give up. And no matter how many times you get knocked to the mat, life is not all rainbows and sunshine, that beautiful speech that Rocky delivers to his son in Rocky Balboa. And I remember watching the Rocky movies with my daughters. They were young at the time. I wanted them to watch the movies because they taught a principle about life. Life is not always easy. It does kick us where it hurts. And sometimes we do fall on that mat, but it is our choice to stay on that mat or to pick ourselves up and face our fears, our opponents, our Apollo Creeds, whoever they are. So never, ever, ever give up. You get slapped in the face, you get knocked down off your horse, you suffer a love loss, a wealth loss, whatever it is. That's not the end of your story. Unless you choose it to be. So what I can leave you with is really never give up. Go for what makes you happy. Go for what makes you joyful. And if you need to learn how to get there, find the people, the resources, the training to get you there. But look forward to the beauty that this life has to give, because it has so much abundance. And the moment you start to think that it does, the moment you are open to the universe, I speak from experience. If I tell myself and I believe it and I follow through with action, it's amazing how many other people and other opportunities open up simply because I made myself available for it. I spoke to the universe listened, and everything in abundance comes to those who attract it. And you must attract it. And the only person who can do that is yourself. Get yourself out of your hostage state.
I love it.
Do not stay in it.
Wow. Okay, so, honestly, I'm kind of speechless right now because I've really envisioned doing this for so long, and just to see it, just get executed relatively smoothly. I am so pumped. I'm serious. This is from the heart. Thank you for every single person. I don't care if it was one person watching this on Facebook Live, whether it was one person on YouTube.
Yeah.
I am so grateful to have this opportunity. Paul, you don't understand how much this means to me. Just for you to give me this opportunity to start this thing off. Let's grab coffee. I'm passionate about two things, coffee and great networks. I have a lot of great speakers lined up. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
I want to thank you too. You did an amazing job.
Appreciate
and I
it.
know that this is going to take off virally. You're a great host.
Thank you very much, guys.